Hi guys, welcome back to In Case of Econ Struggles. Today I'm going to talk about Unit 3 of the AP Macro Curriculum, which is about the ADAS model. Because I'm doing a unit review, I'm not going to spend particularly a ton of time on each section, but I am trying to give you the big idea in sort of as concise of a video as possible. What I'll do in the timestamps and the description below is I'll post when I talk about each one of these subparts of the unit. So if you're looking for a particular section, you can go ahead and jump through it or jump around. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, like I said, the goal of the ADAS model is we want to evaluate policy decisions at the macro level, talk about how they impact GDP, prices, inflation, all of those good things. And so what we're going to do is we're effectively going to boil the economy down into three markets. The first market is going to be the labor market. So those are people looking for a job, having a job, what the wage is, all those sorts of things. We're going to talk about the goods market, which is also going to talk about savings and investment. Basically, this is just going to be demand. This is demand for things like goods and investments and other things that people or firms want to buy. And the asset and the money market, this is basically going to be our supply curve. This is going to tell us things about firm costs. It's going to tell us about things like demand and supply for money in the economy. All those things are going to go in the asset and the money market. And so what we're going to say is we're going to say the economy is in a long-run equilibrium when all three markets are in equilibrium and the intersection of all three of those markets. And so basically it's going to be one line per market on this ADAS curve, where we're basically just going to have a supply and demand, and we're going to have a long-run supply curve. Another way to think about the ADAS curve is if you remember from a couple of units ago, when we have this graph where this is time, this is real GDP, and this is the natural rate of output or the potential outcome or Y bar. And we said that there are these sort of wiggles in real GDP around potential outcome where we have inflationary and recessionary gaps. One of the goals of the ADAS curve is basically to indicate what type of gap we're in, talk about how our economy adjusts back towards potential outcome or the natural rate of output, and again to predict what we can do in terms of fiscal and monetary policy, where if we're way up here, how can we help the economy go back to the natural rate of output? And if we're in a recession, how can we use fiscal and monetary policy to get back up to the natural rate of output? So those are all things that we want to do with this model. And so what we're going to say is we're going to talk about a graph in which we have output on the x-axis. We have the price level. Sometimes it's inflation, but most of the time it's price on the y-axis. We're going to have three curves, one for each market. Now the first market I'm going to talk about is the long-run aggregate supply curve, where this pink line, the same as before, represents Y bar. The reason it represents Y bar is what we're saying is that if everyone is employed, if we have full employment, this is how much stuff we can make. And so, for example, in the United States, the natural rate of employment is about 98%. We assume basically 2% unemployment for people looking for jobs. And so if 98% of people are employed, then this is the amount of stuff we can make. And so that's what the economy is going to tend to. Now, if we think about the goods market or demand, of course, as price goes up, the amount of stuff we demand goes down. So it makes sense that that's downward sloping. For the supply curve, as the price increases, firms are willing to make more stuff. And so it makes sense that this short-run aggregate supply curve is upward sloping. Now, I said that one of our goals is to be able to indicate when the economy is in a recessionary inflationary gap. So what I've done is I've taken the graph that I showed you earlier with time and GDP, and I've picked a point where we are above the natural rate of output in blue, and I picked a point which we are below the natural rate of output in purple, and I've showed you what the ADAS curve would look like under those scenarios. So if we have an inflationary gap, then that means that our output is above or to the right of the natural rate of output, which means that our short-run curves need to intersect to the right of this long-run aggregate supply or potential output or the natural rate of output. And if we're in a recessionary gap, then where the short-run aggregate supply curve and the short-run aggregate demand curve intersect should be at a lower output or to the left of the natural rate of output Y bar. And so that's what you can see in this graph in purple on the right. And so now we've accomplished our goal of showing inflationary and recessionary gaps using the ADAS curve. Now, when we're in an inflationary or recessionary gap, of course, the economy wants to go back or tends towards the natural rate of output. So there's some automatic stabilization that's going to occur, and it's going to occur through the short-run aggregate supply curve. It's not going to occur through demand. It's going to occur through the supply curve. This is a slow process, which is one of the reasons why we think policy can be important or can be helpful, because this process is generally pretty slow. If we're in an inflationary gap, what's going to happen? Okay, well, the economy is running really hot. Stores have lines outside their door. A lot of people want to buy their product. And so what's going to happen is firms are going to slowly increase their price. And as they increase their price, what's going to happen is the supply is going to shift up. We're going to follow along the demand curve all the way back until we're in long-run equilibrium, where all three curves intersect at the natural rate of output, but with a higher price, and so we have inflation. Now, on the other hand, if we're in a recessionary gap, our GDP currently is quote-unquote too low, and so what's going to happen is that firms are slowly going to start lowering their prices, and as they lower their prices, the supply curve is going to shift down, and as the supply shifts down, we're going to follow the demand curve right back to the natural rate of output. We're going to have some deflation, but we're going to get back to the natural rate of output. So now that we know that we do have automatic stabilization, although it's kind of slow, let's think about the different tools that we have in terms of government and the central bank to try and address these inflationary and recessionary gaps. When we talk about fiscal and monetary policy, specifically fiscal policy, there are two different levers they can pull in terms of the government. They can increase or decrease government spending. They can increase and decrease taxes. Both of those levers are going to affect the aggregate demand curve. They're not going to affect the aggregate supply curve. Monetary policy, on the other hand, is going to affect the aggregate supply curve. Specifically, it's only going to affect the short-run aggregate supply curve. Remember that the long-run aggregate supply curve is based on the full employment level of output. So if something changes in terms of technology, or more people join the labor force, or people leave the labor force, that's going to impact the long-run aggregate supply curve. Monetary policy, on the other hand, is not going to affect any of those necessarily. So it's mainly going to affect the short-run aggregate supply curve. Those two levers for monetary policy are they can raise or lower interest rates, and they can increase or decrease the money supply. Now, with different types of policy, if we want to increase Y, we call that expansionary, and if we want to decrease Y, we call that contractionary. So what I've done here on this slide is I've just shown the ADAS curve, where I basically put all the other curves except for the one we're moving in black, where I've shown expansionary policy in this row, contractionary policy in this row. This column is fiscal policy, this column is monetary policy, and as you might expect, again, if we're doing expansionary, then where we end up in terms of where the short-run aggregate supply curve and short-run aggregate demand curve intersect should be at an output level that's higher than what we had before, and you can see that with these two graphs on top. Conversely, contractionary policy, we've just been moving the same graph back, and so I've shown that here as well. If you got questions on this specifically, feel free to put this in the comment section below, but hopefully this makes the ADAS curve make a little more sense. The last thing we need to talk about for this unit is multipliers. When I talk about multipliers, this just means that when we are putting an extra dollar into the economy, we actually are going to increase spending in the economy by more than $1. So for example, suppose that everyone spends 50% of their income, so that if Bill, for example, gets an extra dollar in income, that's going to lead to 1 over 50%, or $2, maybe an increase in total spending. Because what happens is Bill gets his dollar, maybe he spends it at Dana's store. Dana has that extra dollar, she's going to spend 50% of it and save the other 50% of it. Maybe she pays her worker Cassie. Cassie takes that extra 50 cents and she spends half of it, or the 25 cents, at a different store. And it just keeps going where people spend half their extra income with someone else, or they give it to someone else. And if you added up all those additional spendings, you would get 1 over 50%, or $2. Now, this idea of people spending a certain percent of their income or their extra income, that's what we call the MPC, or the marginal propensity to consume. And so the expenditure multiplier, which is one multiplier you need to know for the AP exam, is just 1 divided by MPC. So in our case with 50%, we got 1 over 1/2, which was equal to 2. Now, on the other hand, there are two other multipliers that you need to know. One is called the tax multiplier, and one is called the government spending multiplier. And now, if the government lowers taxes, then what we're going to have is we're going to have an increase in spending, and so we're going to have basically this marginal propensity to consume. But what people are also going to do is they are going to save a little bit more because they know that taxes will probably increase later. So the tax multiplier is negative MPC over 1 minus MPC. This negative sign, of course, because if taxes go down, spending goes up. And if taxes go up, spending goes down. Now, on the other hand, the government multiplier is just almost exactly the same as the expenditure multiplier. It's 1 over 1 minus MPC. The reason it's 1 over 1 minus MPC is because, of course, the government's doing some spending. And so people are thinking that, well, I might have to pay extra taxes later. And so the government multiplier isn't quite as high as the expenditure multiplier. Again, if there are specific questions on any topics in Unit 3, feel free to put that in the comment section below, even if you want me to just dive a little deeper into one specific section. But if this video or these videos in general helping you out, please like and subscribe. See you next time for another case of econ struggles.